when we are eating food, we cannot just eat one dish or one category. If we eat just one category, then even in terms of nutrition, we will have imbalance. And like that, even at the time of practice, if we just have one practice, although it seems like it's possible, with just one, it's not possible to achieve our final goal. Just accumulating our everyday merit or virtue, it is merely a luck or virtue, but that itself is not the enlightenment. But when we say you are not lucky, if you are looking at like different lucks or virtues, to say if you don't have any luck on terms of value, then you will not even want to study. And even if you start to study, you suffer from the poor livelihood, and it will be difficult for you to survive. And so the accumulating the merit and virtues, they are not the obstacles for enlightenment, but you have to know that it helps you. So, for example, if we say, I'm only going to study the scriptures, and if you only study the scriptures, then you are merely someone who only chases after the knowledge. With that, it's not enough. So even with the pillar, it's not possible to build a house. Just like that. Well, when I talk about this, I'm talking about this to make you have the reflection of yourself. What's my problem, and what am I doing? And if you have a close look at yourself, you will also come up with countermethods. And as they get prepared, next time when you are born, you could be also born in a place where close to bodhisattvas. Or you could also be born at the same time frame as the great saints and also could be serving them. Normally, if you're also poor in the terms, although you're born as a human, you could also be born in a place where they only have outside doctrines and the Dharma that we are talking about here are the things that leads us to happiness. And if you are virtueless, then you could also believe that if you just take things from others, that could lead you to happiness. And if you face only that kind of environment, then a lot of people could also go through a bad or wrong sense of samsara. So even when you're offering the 7 different offerings to the bodhisattvas, the reason why we are repeatedly doing it is our effort to become close to them. There are our efforts to be close to the bodhisattvas, and there is no way to get close to them without such efforts. Even in our next life, we'll be far away from the bodhisattvas, and even if we meet them, because we have not requested for Buddhism or Dharma, so we also lose opportunity to be close to them. And even if we are listening to the teachings, since we are not able to understand, it doesn't work out. And even when we listen to the teachings, if you don't have the thought of transferring it to all other sentient beings, then it could just live out as a state that you only take the advantage for yourself and live it out. So even in Avatamsakara Sutra, it's written, this bodhisattva came from this area, and she has brought thousands and 10,000s of Buddhist believers. And the other bodhisattva came from this area, and she came with so many people. And the other bodhisattva came from some other nation. The area here refers as nation, and she brought thousands of believers, and she attended this teaching. Then this is all the bodhisattvas while listening to this teaching in order to transfer the teaching, and because they transfer, that has also happened. If you only like, it could also lead in something that you only like yourself and have confusion. It's just like when you have planted the potato. If you don't have two of them, then it's easy to. It also it's possible that even the one gets rotten, and also it also becomes like a chance for you to lose your connection to the Buddhist teaching. I don't know how you take this, but in a very late night, if there is a flashlight on a very dark night, then everyone is bound to see the flashlight. In order not to see it, even if you close your eyes or if you turn other side, if you turn your head to other side, then you will fall. Just like people like the flashlight or the light. So the right sayings, even if the person is wronged or even if the person is colored by afflictions or agony, if that person hears the good sayings, then they know that that's the good saying. Why to someone else if I tell the first reason why it doesn't affect anyone? First of all, even if you're listening to the teachings, once you gather, you talk about useless issues like going to which shop to go. Other than those things, you don't really have a proper conversation, and because of that, if you start talking about the bright stories, bright things about the teaching, then after listening to those teachings or the bright sense, I have picked up something and there was a goal, and they are bound to follow to pick up the gold. It's bound to happen. It just takes some time, but if you speak, if you repeat the thing that you have heard, and if you memorize, and if you pass on to someone else, then the most difficult part for me, I am telling you today, but here I have done my teaching for 27 years. But the number of believers is still the same. I have a fault in this regard, but even you all have a great fault in this. So the Buddha's teaching is the sayings of a saint. Since there is no lie at all, even people who are living with the lie, they also know that the sayings which doesn't have lie is actually good. They all know it. And so about these parts, you have to have the deep understanding and also realize that your understanding to your parents or your belief is not strong, and your sense to contribute to other sentient beings and go back to where you came from is not strong enough. And so when we say you go back to where it had been or you transfer, it means you want to tell the story of your Buddhist teaching that you've learned to others. It's not that from the beginning the Buddha had a lot of disciples, but it was so good to hear that people started spreading the story between his disciples, and that's how people gathered. And so even in Dharma Sutra, it's written that speaking for the others, that is the transference. And if you do that, it starts to branch out. And with that relation, again, in your next life, you will meet that new teacher. And you could also meet many good people. If you live out the Hinayana and also the Buddhism in southeastern countries, well, this is a very selfish thought. People don't have strong sense of understanding for seven offerings, but instead they think offering itself ends with just a few donations. Praying, repentance, and also listening to the teachings, all of them are offerings. And the greatest offering is listening to the teaching or requesting for the teaching. Those people who doesn't know how to request teaching from a teacher, then that content doesn't have its essence. If the teaching is not the essence, then it's all useless. While I moved so countless times, even to Delhi, well, even when I told people that I would come to Delhi once a month to give the teaching, but still they don't understand. It just gets evaporated in the air because their request for teaching is so weak. Well, if I take direct flight to Delhi, and I was willing to offer, but they could not accept it. So when you request a teaching, it's not that you prepare a place to have the teaching and do it. Well, although that's obvious, well, in Yasu, when we say it's someone's birthday, we just buy a meal. So don't tell me that you want to buy me a meal. Even eating a meal in that house with an invitation, I go there in order to do the teaching. We will sit together and we'll talk about Buddhist teaching together. Even marriage and even funerals, all of them are for the spread of Buddhist teaching. And so whether the people who live or whether the people who died, everyone can live as per the Buddhist teaching. It is all done with the efforts. Sometimes when I was invited, and when I go there, they tell the husband not to come, and the kids they go out to play. And what are you going to do with a wife alone? To such a place, I don't even want to go there ever again. And again, if I go, they only pursue after things to eat, and to the extent that even the table's leg would break off. Well, if you eat too much, it's also not healthy. Even if it's just a noodle, we can just have a simple meal, and over a cup of tea, we could talk about the teaching. And if you have a teacher, then obviously, if you have the teacher, you ask them to sing. And if you have a religious teacher, you could ask for a good presentation of the Buddha's teaching. Then the family can sit, and also the families could also receive their own the blessings. That is our everyday Buddhism. But for us, everything is floating up in the air. And also, when I go to eat the meal, they have no intention of teaching. And so it's just complicated and it's just messy. And they just move around with the bowl. And it's just so loud. That's all I feel. Those kind of things are not okay. So if we eat a meal simply, and if you request for a good teaching for your family, requesting for the teaching, it is the greatest offering. in your 3,000 different cosmos, rather than having the heavenly universe with different jewels, rather than having them, having a better teacher in front of you and inviting them to have a teaching is way more precious. It's way more virtuous than any other thing. So even if we talk about all these things, it's not really working out. And since they're so complicated, and I always say, since it's since it's against what we had been planned before, if you just feel sorry for me and if you invite me for a meal, I say I don't want to go anymore. The most important thing amongst the 7 different offerings is where the request of the disciples to request Buddha to stay for a long time. Well, it's not only the teacher, but even for good people around, it's an obvious request to ask them stay for longer. But listen to teachers' teaching and keep it in your heart, and that is our motivation to live a proper life. Then only your relation to meet your teacher in your next life would get closer. You're again born in a place where there's a teacher, and again that would keep repeating. If that doesn't happen, even if you are born in a place where there's teacher, if the teaching is not in your center, then even if you're born in such a place, even if you're beside your teacher, you will not try to listen to the teaching. You just do some other, your attention will be on something else. So we talk about, and we also discuss, and we offer the 7 different offerings. We recite mantras, we also chant, and we also request for the teaching, and we request them to stay for a long time, and also transcending our teachings. That's one of the most important factor for us to stay close to the Buddhist teaching. Amongst them, as once again, requesting for the teaching from your teacher is the most important thing in this life that you have to keep in your mind. In your heart, for example, if you get married or if you have some ceremony, if a monk comes and does something, the thing I felt for over 30 years in Yasu, the first efficient offer that was made to me was mostly the remarriage, about 80 to 90%. For the second marriage, since it's difficult to do it in the wedding hall, you just want me to do whatever is needed, and the request was just to proceed with the marriage. And also you expect something good for the greetings if a monk attends there, but it is not so. For people who have gathered that day, I'm trying to enable that the relation for the teaching is connected. Even all of you, even though you come to the monastery, most of the time it's not there. It's 0. So about that regard, if you try and by putting efforts, by making 7 offerings, and because of that, you don't distance yourself from your teacher and also the virtues, and also by accumulating our own virtues, you'll be able to approach Buddhist teaching in a more easy way. If you don't do that, even if there's a saint in your next door, you will not realize that that person is a saint and you will eventually die. And that's because your bowl is either poisoned or small or broken. And so the person who is sitting next to you, although they're trying to teach you, for example, even if I want to give a bowl of rice to this person, if the bowl the person has is broken or poisoned or dirty or has fungus, or if he has a bowl that's so weird that it cannot contain it, then just like I cannot give the food to the bowl, even if there's a teacher who knows about the teaching very well, it cannot happen. So all the time, you you have to see if you can be the container of the teaching, or if you are virtuous, or if you have the good heart to receive the teaching. You always have to keep that in mind, or else if you don't accumulate virtues before then, when you face those kind of obstacles, you believe that you will be able to overcome them, but most of the time you're not able to overcome them. If your husband yells at you and throws tantrum at home about twice, then do you think you can come here? You cannot come here. Even if there is a little obstacle, you'll be soon shaken. And you'll say that because of some reasons you cannot come, because you have to open your shop, or sometimes when I see on the first day of the lunar calendar, where people come and go, they come and go in a very busy phase. There are people like that. Then when I ask them to stay for the prayer, they say, oh, well, I have to go and open the store. And they're already chased away by the time, and their eyes are already rolling. Well, of course, the person has many different reasons why the person has opened the store. In order to earn their daily bread, or there could be so many reasons. But when I also think, when is the person going to realize and also calm down and listen to the teaching? But if you believe that there is no need to listen to the teaching, and there will be no need of taking care of your next life, if you just want to live as however you want, or however it happens, that doesn't matter. But if you don't practice, and if you look at the people who doesn't do their practice, and really one day, if they're sick, or if they age, and if their mental is not strong, sometimes when I go to the nursing home, the people who used to come to Seokcheon Monastery, when I asked them to study, all the time they were like yes and yes. And those people who didn't study at all, and when they have Alzheimer, and when they're not in the right mind, I think it is not a simple thing. If we have abundant virtues and merits that we have accumulated, then it's very easy to go towards the road of Buddhism. Shall I talk about Venerable Sasan? Because he has a lot of virtues from his previous life, he didn't even have to learn about the scriptures, but when he was sitting for his official test for the minister, he was talented enough to pass the test, but the government at the time, it was already rotten. So they had already chosen him to be selected, and the rumor was widespread. But when he saw the list of candidates who passed the test, it was as per the rumor. Where if you say the Senuri party had their list for those who would be supported by the team, just like how it is true. And at the time, it was also very difficult. He had to erase he has to erase his status for also for nobles, and so it was also difficult. So he went to a monastery, and that night, when he sat down, he learned about the Diamond Sutra just like that. No, there was no even need to listen to the teaching. The whole night he read that a lot of times. That's also because he has virtues and accumulated merits. So even if he didn't listen to the teaching, he could come to an understanding. There are also people who cannot even have an understanding despite the fact that they listened to so many times. So he woke up in the morning and he stayed awake the whole night. And when he was paying greetings to Venerable Sumi in the morning, he asked, "Is there a story like this? This is about Buddha. Who is Buddha?" And when he was explained who Buddha is, he said, "Was there a great saint like that in India? Then other than this, can you suggest me something else?" And he was also suggested Lotus Sutra. So he read that 2-3 times. And he became a monk. And he started his road as a monk. He started his monk in Hua Monastery. For someone who is so strong, who has accumulated merit, even just by listening or looking at it once, they start their path. If you don't think about the importance of the teaching, or if you don't understand what's going on, then even after thousands of repetition, you still follow the same path. At the time of listening, you would believe that this is correct, but the moment you come, you could also believe that your daily chores are more important. That's why even if you do something, it's very slow. And when I ask you to do some meditation, well, people say, when I ask you to do good deeds, when I ask you to do meditation, they say, well, I said about for twice, it didn't work. And that's quite funny because I don't think you ever tried. Or they say, well, it didn't really work. When I ask how many times did you try, they say for about 4 times, and my legs were hurting. You have to know that your efforts are so weak. You have to think that you should have put more efforts and try to understand why your leg hurts so much. You have to think about your virtues and also the merits. Also, I have one more warning to give. Those people who study a little after listening to this teaching, they sit and write novels just like Kim Gil. They write novels thinking they know something. And they also misunderstand that they are actually performing way more than they are actually practicing. When I sit and listen, it seems like your studies are not of that level. From the teaching that you listen and remember, let's take an offering as an example. That's the easiest thing among the practice. And that too, the materialistic offering is the easiest thing. Amongst the 6 paramita, when we want to peel the chestnut, we have to open the first layer, and as the layer, the inside layer is more difficult to peel it. And because we have done something that is already hardened, we started doing it from something that is hardened. That's the easiest thing. But if you measure how much of it you have done, then you will know very well what you are doing right now, how much you have done and how you are doing. And you also know how much of your practice has been progressing. When I am selling, or when I am working as a housewife, if I'm spending $10,000 a month, am I at least spending $100 or $200 for poor people? Well, if I'm not doing that, then what am I doing? You're just offering, or you're just performing merits with your thoughts. You haven't done anything. That's why even when you go to church, for a whole week you do wrong things and you live your life as per your greediness. And although you have not stolen or committed crime, if you say living as per your greediness is crime, then you go to church, you make your repentance, and once it's done, the repentance you made for a week, when it's over, and again the next week, starting from next week, you live as per your greediness again, and then you again make your repentance. And so you tend to ignore that you are actually committing a mistake, and you misunderstand that I have not done anything wrong. I'm going to church, I'm going to the monastery. What have I done wrong? So sometimes when the believers talk to me regarding practice, well, if that person is someone who is looking at it in detail, it's quite embarrassing to look at because we have not done many things. But people who are mistaken, they keep talking about it under the notion that they have achieved quite a lot. But that doesn't have like so much implications. We're discussing about how our mind and thoughts actually change. It is not something that we are just talking about our perceptions. When we say we are going to contribute or offer, the level of offering or contribution should also be a certain extent. Then only we can say you are actually practicing the offering paramita. Without that kind of thought, what are we saying we are offering? So for me, in order to avoid uncomfortable situation and discomfort, if you just sit at home, tell me that you feel comfortable, then anyone can do such kind of practice. Even monks, they chase after the well-being and go into a mountain, and they look for particular field which comes them, but their mind cannot, but you cannot really find happiness or comfort from those. The essence is you need to change your heart first. The life that you led with you in the center, from that it has to change to something of selfless. And then if you enact a selfless act, or if you have selfless speeches, then your body and your mind will also change. If not so, then even if you go to monasteries, it doesn't really matter. When you don't change, what kind of happiness can there be there? And when I'm filled with selfishness and greediness, what kind of happiness can come to us? Buddhism is very clear. Everything starts from the heart. It's so clear and it's been spoken outright that it starts from the heart. Well, there's a field, there's a farm, and the farm here is just like our body. And if you ask what farm is that, we are talking in terms of the seed. The seed of the heart, which has raised the thought to become Buddha, then that is the farm of a Buddha. It becomes a form of the Buddha. You become the body of Buddha. You attain the body of Buddha. And the species is like the farmer who is actually farming. If in order to have our system filled, if we speak about it, then just like how a farmer does his farming, the farm becomes the system farm, and also it grows, and eventually we will be able to harvest the sesame seed, just like that. Where Dorem Sunim has once said this. Since he's a famous saint, people came to see him, and this monk came. This monk was sitting at the edge of the pine tree branch, and so he was doing his practice there because he did not want to fall asleep, because he did not want to doze off. So someone came and spoke to Venerable Doram, who was sitting on top. And he asked, what is the essence of Buddhism? He said, don't do mean things, don't do bad things, and do the good things. And he said, well, if your heart is purified, then that is Buddhist teaching. And said that's something that even 30-year-old kids know. You should say something more grand or something more mature about it. And he said, although 3-year-old kids know about it, even 80-year-old old man finds it difficult to do it. Speaking about it is something that even 3-year-old child can do. But even someone of 80 years old, it's impossible to do something good 100%. It's a very difficult saying. It's a very difficult saying. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, no matter depending on the region. It's difficult. So when we look at it, when we study this, I went to the village. Was it called? Well, we can see that someone of 60 years old, he was choosing between the beans. He was picking the beans. And so I asked him deliberately, what are you going to do with the bean? And he said, they are the seeds. He's choosing the seed to plant for his next season. And when I saw it, so it first occurred to me that this person is really a farmer. When he was choosing when they're harvesting the bean, they put in the machine, and then the beans they break, and there are many beans that doesn't have the sprout. And so in order to have the seed, you can you can break the bamboo into 1/4, and you can use that to dust it in order to save its shape. And just by looking at that, we know that he's a great farmer. There is no need to look at other things. If he's level of that much, then he's really good at farming. You understand? Well, when I look at it like this, where I think I can come to know if the person is good at wearing makeup or not, putting on the makeup or not. Just by looking at it, I came to know that the person is not good at applying makeup, and the other person is good. And don't ask me. So to the farmer, I asked him, where is your farm? And he showed me at the back, the big farm. Well, when I saw it, I could not even find any stems. Well, if you give too much fertilizers to the bean, then it grows too tall, and there's only flies over there, and it's not really nutritious, or it is really not hard too. So, and when I saw his farm, the beans were really fat, and also the stems were not too tall. It was really good. So if you just look at only one part, then you can know. So even for humans, we look at people in their eyes. Look at your eyes. If you look at your eyes, then you know. Through this site, we interact with the outside world, and that's about 80%. And so we also come to know what kind of relationship that person has with the outer world. We can come to know that from their eyesight. So when I go to prison to do my teaching, then I can see the murderer, thief, also cheetah, and where people with so much anger and wrath for others, when you look at them in their eyes, your eyesight or even your sights are even reddish in color, bloodshot. And cheaters, their eyes are one step backwards. If you look closely, you can see it. Their eyes, in order to think, their eyes are like one step behind in order to think. It's like this. And so I look at it when I do my teaching. Well, that person should be cheetah. The person is like a fighter. The person is a thief. Do you know how is the eyesight of the thief? It doesn't shine. The eyesight of the thief, it's almost like it's always behind the wall. Just like the thought beyond the wall, it's also like that. They're not looking at it straight, and it's like this. Very different. Is my eyes looking different? Is my sight looking different? I don't know why they're not taking me as an entertainer or actor. I think I'll be quite good at it. And those who are good at fighting, they're always trying to take control of others, and so their eyes are like this. And those cheaters who cheat others, for them, the black side of the eyes is heading upstairs, upwards. So when I look at it, the supernatural, the super knowledge or the subtle power of the eyes is something like that. When you see them, you realize. Well, once I talked to someone and he wanted my name card, so I gave him my name card. And when I asked for his name card, he didn't even give me his. But when I saw his eyes, it was like this. And so when his eyes were like this, and so I thought maybe he's going to say something useless. So I asked him, are you a priest? And he said so. I asked him, are you a pastor? He said so. And he said the world has to follow one religion, and also I asked him, do you know which religion goes against the world's will the most? And he did not answer. I said that's the Christian, because the Catholics, because they believe that the all religion has to unify as under the God only. And including India, we have about many millions of people, but until so far they have not succeeded, but killed many people. When I think of it, we have to get rid of the absolute God. Then I think there will be peace. And when I asked his opinion, he said the religion has to be one. And I asked him, with what religion can we become one? And he said the God created all. And I said, I'm not created by God, but I am created by my mother. I was created by my mother. Is there anyone who was created by the God? I told him that I am made by my mother. And I asked him, are you created by the God? And he said, in olden times. And I said, yes, in olden times, but not now. It's olden times. Why do you say it's now? And where's the evidence say we have been created by God in the beginning? There's no evidence. And so he said, if the history comes true, the prophecy of God comes through, then we'll come to know. And so I asked him, which of his prophecy came true. And he was talking about the Noah story. And I said that happened in Fukushima. Do not talk about the area, what happened, the ark of Noah as the overall the human race problem, because they had big flood in front of them, and at the time there was not very good communication. So when something like that happened in a small area, for them the whole was collapsing down. But well, it's also a big thing, Fukushima's thing. It's still not solved. You should not be stuck in such a play of the perception. Buddhism is not the is not a playroom of the concept. In Buddhism, it's question of, at this place, at this time, how can I be happy? It's confirmed that we are not as happy, and what happens? There is no other way other than throwing away our greediness and our afflictions. if it pokes you in your pocket, then you have to take it out and throw it away. Even you, when you're eating fish, and if you have thorns inside, then you throw it away. Is there anyone who doesn't throw it away and tries to swallow it and get hurt? Then through analysis, and even if you try to be greedy, you cannot achieve what you want to. It looks like you are achieving it, but it disappears. If there's anything that can come through with greediness, raise your hand and tell me if there's anything that can be achieved. If there's anyone who can tell me that you can live for 120 years if you are greedy. Tox's mother, can you live 120 years? You can't. Don't you think you'll be able to live for 120 years if you are greedy or if you kneel in front of the God? Well, Venerable Joju, he lived until 120, but he could not stand up. And so he would lie down, even when someone comes to pay him his respect. And do you also think you can live with a lot of money eternally? Even when you have a lot of money, when the time comes you are going to depart from this world, there's no way. Well, look at this cherry blossom flower. Even the cherry blossom flower lasts only momentarily. The cherry blossom flower blossoms and disappears. It flies off when it rains. If the cherry blossom flowers last for a year, then we would not even have so much affections for it, and we are not even grateful for the seed that we see in Yeosu, because we see it every day. From the Chungcheong area, I saw someone quite interesting in Odongdo. Looking at the security, the Coast Guard. He said, how is the still floating on the water? In the person's knowledge, the still cannot float on the water. But if you think of the buoyancy, it's possible. Well, this is still looking at how it's rusted, but how is it floating on the water? And here's the thought, well, in Odongdo, there is island in middle of the sea, because all they see is mountain in front of them. And when they pass through the net market in Namsan, he said, Yeosu's people don't have any compassion, and they are also very mean. Well, they could leave the baby octopus and then make it grow, let it grow and eat. But this cousin, they are different beings. Or are they two different species? Well, up to that extent, I could just smile and laugh away. But he wanted to buy some anchovies. And the person was, why did you catch all the babies? If you leave it, it could have turned to other bigger fish. There is no sea in Tibet. There's only a lake. And they think of the lake as such a sacred thing. For them, they think of it as a place where everything in this world has been created. So when they go to the lake, if they wash their hands, the lake would be polluted. So they don't even let us wash our hands. And one Chinese model took some pictures there for swimsuit, and it was such a big mess there. On our sacred lake, they took some posters for the swimsuit, and it's so embarrassing. And they don't know what is a fish. So when they come here, in the beginning, when the Chung Guntala came, he also doesn't know of our area's specific characters. And also when we tell Yasu people not to put meat, not for us, fish is not meat, but fish is not meat, but poultry is only considered meat. And when we ask people to not to put meat, they said they made a fish soup and they say it is not meat. And when I asked people to prepare seaweed soup because they never tasted that, because we keep eating liver, they ask what is the black pepper. They call it as the black pepper instead of liver. And when I say it's a lover from the sea, he says it's tasty. So I asked people to make the seaweed soup. And I told people not to put meat, but they said they put prawns and said it is not a meat. Well, that's how people in Yasu are. And Kutela, Nechun Kutela left and said there is insect inside. For him, it was again an insect. So he's not aware because he never encountered that. So for Chungcheong person, it's okay to say or same, like how the Chungcheong people said, the steel is also floating on the sea. And once the Chungcheong Bukdo's person came, and he saw, in the seafood in the seafood market, he saw the sea urchin, and he said, "Why is a chestnut in the seafood market?" So if the environment is different, or if we are not aware, then our ideas or thoughts are so different, our perceptions. I feel now I have become like Yasu person. Now I know the feelings or the the sentiments of Yasu. I think it should also be in the dictionary. The depression, it's on the well, in the dictionary it's written that depression is the condition that people of 30 to 40 feels. Well, and Yasu people's sentiments should be on the dictionary. The Yasu people's pronunciation, it has both answers, yes and no, together in it. The response contains both yes and no. When I say let's go to pilgrimage, your eyes become. If you want to go, then you should try and say yes, but the eyes, I'm not sure if you should go or not, and the answer is yes. And first I thought that was yes, but later, because you didn't come when I asked why didn't you come, and then you say, well, I didn't say I would come. And so I realized, well, that's the response that contains both yes and no. So I even did the research on its origination with the Yasu event to say the when the situation of Yasu happened, if you answer yes, you could also die at the time. So I think that's how it originated. We couldn't understand this. So for us, yes is yes and no is no. And if we are not sure, we don't answer. But this is very complicated and very difficult response. Where even if we say, well, that is just so, you do understand very well. When I say it is that thing and this thing is just this, you do understand very well. Well, for me, even nowadays, I don't understand that well. that it implies hundreds of different things. But with just one expression of that, you can explain it all. Well, it's about lunchtime, and so it is like that. And that too, you understand. It means you're hungry. Well, it is just like that with that person. That means you don't like that person. If the person's appearance is just like that, then it means the person is ugly. I want to hang out with the person, but it is a little like that, and that means you don't want to hang out with that person. The time flew really fast. We just did one line. We didn't even complete one line. So even without effort, you can accumulate the wisdom, the virtue of wisdom, and also the merit. So if you want the study to happen automatically, we don't make the cart and let it go. But in order to make it roll, we also in order to make it roll, if we put engine and then it should just move until you start to drive. The car is made with so much technology. Likewise, before we enter into the actual, the real practice, you have to have deep understanding or deep study of if your virtues or other accumulated merits are well prepared. And so even if you are practicing your practice, you also need to practice what you lack at. You can also match a lot of people with a lot of so even when you are doing your practice, if you are actually trying to enhance your sense of bodhicitta and trying to study, then the more property you have, it's better. But I realize that now. If I had realized that long ago, then I would have a lot of money now. If I had realized that like hundreds of lives before, then I would have a lot of money. If I have to do all over Korea, then I would just do all the things with all my money. But even if I want to do it now, it's not really possible now. But I think even my virtues that I have accumulated in my past life, is not very distinctive. So in all lives, you can remember all your lives too. So if you enter into the first stage of bodhisattva, then you can remember even your very, very old past life. So when Shakyamuni Buddha, after the Lotus Buddha, ever since he performed many bodhisattva deeds, and the things that he remembered and the things that he spoke about, that is the story of Bonsengdam. They are all stories that he remembered. Well, they are not novels. The Chataka story, Bonsengdam is Chataka in English, in Sanskrit. So you could also wonder if that's possible, but even nowadays there are many children who remember their previous life without even practice. You too, before you were 5, you would have remembered your past life little by little, even all of you. Why did you forget? Because in reality, we rely on our senses, and that's why we forget our past life. We even forget what happened yesterday. So you wake up in the morning, And after teaching, you eat something, but you don't remember what you ate. And so you think about it for long, and then you remember that you had an ice cream. You don't even remember what happened to you about 12 hours ago. Then about 120 years ago, you of course not remember well. But if your practice is deep, then you remember all your past. And well, Dalai Lama has said, maybe he remembered his past life when he saw me. He said he met me in the prison in Egypt in many lives before. And so I asked him, do I look like a Mubarak? Such virtue, which is limitless, is also shown in other sutras, so you have to do practice. It's important to remember that the potential practice is boundless. Likewise, you have to practice the compassion, and there will come a time when you come to the pure maturity of your studies. And here the means is the 6-parameter studies. And the bodhisattva for the good of all sentient beings. Even our heart, the mind goes through the phenomenon of switching on and switching off. It continues. When the mind continues, it is not just one same mind that continues. Sometimes it is this mind, and sometimes it changes to other. And you also have the mind you don't want to see your husband for about 2 hours. And again, your son passed the test, and then you again have the thought that you like your son. It continues. And this continuation of mind, you have to try to continue with the virtuous thought, and also the compassionate thought, and also the positive thought. So you have to study your mind in detail too. What is it that you're thinking right now? Your personal impression, 70 to 80%. Is it continued 70, 80 to bad feelings? Or is it numb? Or is it only about food that you want to eat today, which should be more tasty? Everyday things to eat, apply, wear, going to salons, buying furniture, buying rings, necklace, earrings. Well, someone has done so. When you go to department store, and if there is the first model that's out, you cannot sleep in the night. The mind continues that way, and you have to go and buy the first copy. If it's up to that level, then it should be difficult to live together. Well, that doesn't mean you should stop living together. That means you have to fix the person to live together. So don't think that my wife does that if I should get divorced. This talks about the sense when there is no agony at all. The mind that has no agony at all, when there is lamp And when there's lamp, and if you have lighted the lamp, and if you put it there, it stays still, just like there is no wind at all. Likewise, you have to proceed with your practice of bodhisattva. Let's end today's teaching here.